Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. I hope you are very well. Today's episode is a one that I think a lot of people want to hear about and is something that I get asked a lot about, and that is about outsourcing sales. How can you successfully let go of being the only salesperson in the business? Or can I completely eradicate myself from the sales process? How can I get it so that other people are doing the heavy lifting of the sales stuff and I don't have to be the person anymore? That is what we're going to dive into today. I will try and make this as quick as possible. I think this is such an interesting topic and one that many, many business owners are going through or trying to work out in their head. So let me just set the picture here. What we are talking about today is that if you are someone who doesn't have a fully automated sales process in the sense of people aren't buying a product, they don't sort of come across a video or some kind of awareness of you and then purchase a product from you and then they get it fulfilled and shipped to you, that is, you'd argue an automated sales process and you're not part of that as the owner of the business. If you are someone who does speak to potential clients or potential purchasers before they buy from you, and you are someone who is talking to them and helping people through the sales process, and maybe that's taken up a lot of your time and you want to get out of that and you want to be able to not spend so much time doing that, that is what we're talking about today. We're talking about, is that possible? Can that happen? How does it happen? How do you make it work? Etc, etc. Now, some people have very strong views on this. Some people are like, yes, you can 100% do it. Some people are like, no, we've tried it was a disaster. Or no, I've seen it play out horrendously. Or I've had a really bad experience where I've seen this not work. Everybody's got a different view on it. I'm going to give you my view. I'm going to give my view, which is, I don't want to say backed, I want to say includes seeing inside of numerous different businesses and seeing how people of various different sizes as well. But we're talking, 7-figure of how they're managing that and how that works, and then also smaller businesses and what can you do. So I'm going to use some of my personal experience and also, the experience of clients and things like that. You're welcome to take from this whatever you wish and, leave the stuff that doesn't sit for you. So this conversation is nuanced. Basically, ultimately, it comes down to sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't work. But off the bat, I want to just say, I personally solely believe that, and I deeply believe this, that you will forever be the best salesperson for your business. So regardless of what you choose to do, you are the best person for sales. You are responsible for sales in your business, and I feel that's very important. As a CEO, as a leader, as a director, as an MD, whatever you class yourself as, you are responsible for sales in your business. Even if you've got a sales team, I don't care. You are responsible for the sales in your business. And I think as long as we own that, we tend to come from things in a good place. What tends to go wrong is when people want to totally disconnect and therefore want nothing to do with it and want the business to run without them. And then the sales piece just gets left in this kind of distant hole of like what's going to happen as a business function. Sales is not a business function that can just sit there and run on its own. I mean, it can in certain situations and places, but for most businesses, if you're a B2B business, sales is an ever-growing, breathing, living part of your business that you need to understand, you need to be glued into. So, when does outsourcing your sales work? It works if your business is already making good profit. It's already got a system that works. Has a process of getting clients that makes sense. It is a process that in your business, you know that you can put out X amount of content and it will convert to get X amount of leads, and those leads can be used to create X amount of outcome. If you've got that situation working in your business, it is way more likely that outsourcing your sales will work to some degree. If you do not know who you speak to, don't know how to get someone from just randomly being sat in the world to being a client, outsourcing your sales, in my opinion, is not the right way to go about it. You'll waste money, you'll waste time, you'll waste resource, the message gets diluted, the brand gets put into kind of, the value of the brand gets all sorts of jeopardy included in that. Like, you just need to make sure that the business is at the right place, in my opinion, for outsourcing sales to work. Can you do all that piece of work before you do that in a relatively quick space of time? Yeah. Sometimes people might say, right, we want to outsource our sales. So can we build a sales strategy and can we build a sales process and a system and a funnel and all the rest of it so that can happen? Yeah, totally. We can do that work and that can happen. But what I'm saying is just don't go and hire like a sales agency or some sort of random addition to your team if the rest of it is completely not clear. The other thing is, if you have clear offering, do you have a clear offering? The thing you're selling, the service, the offer, and the product needs to be super clear, super easy to understand, and actually something that people want. If your business is very niched in what you do, who you do it for, and how it works, that will give you a lot easier scope to be able to outsource your sales. What I mean by that is, if you have a specific target industry with a specific person within a business or an organization, and then you have a clear understanding of what it is you're selling and what the result is, that does work. I have seen that work well. Like, that can really work. But if you're someone that's got loads of nuance and you're refusing to create, like, to sell one offer as a main offer and then upsell afterwards, we're not talking about the upsell piece. That's a separate conversation. I'm talking about just getting people through the door. If you're refusing to kind of like create something that is standardized and that is something that is a product to sell, even if it's a service, then I think you struggle. It does not work if you have a sales problem and then you miraculously want to make more sales by outsourcing. I would argue it ain't a good option. Some people might be able to make more sales for you, but it's the question then becomes is it the people you want? Where are they coming from? How sustainable is it? Does it make sense for the longer term business vision? Like, it wouldn't be something I would recommend. I'd recommend you get it running like a machine, you get it really working, and then you can look at how do you outsource it. Now, the next point of it is it needs to be done in a stage by stage basis, in my opinion. Some people you're going to meet who have, services that do this whole kind of end-to-end servicing for you, like an agency and some kind of closing, like a closing agency or something. They will say, we can take the whole thing off you straight away. And that's fine. Like, maybe they can, and that's great. But for most people, taking away certain pieces of it in a slow time will often give you a better result overall. And what I mean by that is, like, which part of the process are you going to take out at which point? Because actually, what can work the best is, and this is what I've seen work really well, is when you can detach some of the process away from that one person, but that one person, as in the leader or the CEO, is still in it, or the sales director, for example, is still there in it, but they're just not there for the whole thing. And that's normally the one that is the best piece, and it's the easiest compromise, and it's the easiest thing to actually get it to move forward. And I think when we think about how do you not waste money, this is an area where people waste tons and tons of money. If you have a budget where you're like, do you know what, we're going to invest in outsourcing the sales, whether that's an internal sales team or whether that's an external sales team, there's a conversation where it's like, okay, well, how do we not waste this money? Because if you hire an external team, for example, it's quite likely that they will do their job and they can maybe even do it well. They might even be able to bring you the amount of sales that you do want. But the question has to be, will the customer feel the issue on that? Will they feel the same as they did with when you were doing it? Now, I'm not saying that it has to feel exactly the same, because I suppose part of the exception is that you have to accept that it isn't going to be the same. But what you also have to figure out is, how much does the brand change? How much does the proposition change at the point in which the sales process feels different? And again, that's not me saying that like it's right or wrong. I'm just saying you have to figure out in your head, and this comes down to the minute details, okay? You can control this. So again, you can literally, it's how someone answers the phone. It's how someone suggests that you move to the next step. It's the follow-up process. It's how they deal with a lead. It's how they communicate, the language they use. Like, this is all stuff that you can specify, and a good closing agency would go through with you and be like, specifics, this is this, and they would like make it really clear for you. But I think it's just about really understanding that if you're going to do an external outsource in the sense of like an agency, you have to figure out, what is the motive for the people who are work there? Because if you go down the agency route, then people who work for said agency is going to be the people that are dealing with your potential customers and clients. I would argue trying to find an agency that does that well is like gold dust trying to find. And that's where the issue lies, right? Because yes, you can come up with a load of results and testimonials and saying like, this is what we've done for this person, this is what we've done for this person. It's down to whether or not they understand your business, your customer, your brand. And then also it comes down to how much are they interested in your business. And if you are someone who is spending, $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month versus someone who is spending 20 grand a month because they've got such a volume going through, I'm not saying they're going to take the piss, and I'm not saying that you won't get a decent product or a different service from them, but I'm just saying that often you're handing over sales, which is the most scarce, precious part of sort of the business makeup and the success of keeping the sales coming in, but often you're giving it away. And you can't pay 20,000. Most people are not going to spend £20,000 on a sales agency and a closing agency. So like, you're then giving this piece away, and you're thinking, oh goodness me, I want them to take it. It's like my baby, and it's precious, and it's really important that people understand correctly what it is that we offer. And then there can be a disconnect there. Again, I really don't want to make this like bad, or that I'm trying to warn you off doing this, because actually some of these people can do incredible things for your businesses. Like, if you can find a really good agency or really good external team, like, it can change your business. It can change the growth trajectory of it. It's amazing. But I think what's important to think about is, what is the purpose of you being pulled out of it? Is it so you can deliver more? Is it so that you can spend time not working? Like, what is the point of it? Because that will dictate whether external or internal makes more sense. Now, internal outsourcing of sales is a good option. It has its issues, as everything does, but internal can be cool. So for some of you, that might be something you've got now. It might be that you have a receptionist, or you might have someone who takes a kind of brief bit of a consultation call. You might even have like some of your exec assistant or your personal assistant might have some kind of involvement in the sales process. You might have a way where people are kind of semi-bought in. You might want to offer commission to various different people who are allowed to refer people to you, and you can kind of build pieces of your sales process with existing team members that then become part of their role. Again, that's a whole other thing, and you've got to get the strategy really right on that, otherwise it can go drastically wrong. But really thinking about, do you want an internal team? And it could be you have an internal team where it's one person. One person's the sales manager, one person's the sales assistant. Maybe they, help you with sales. And then you stay as like the sales director. And you might not have that title every day, but essentially it is if you're involved in making sure that sales coming into the business and the health of the business is, the sales that you're making sure is getting over the line. But really thinking about, would having an internal sales lead help? I would argue yes. I would say if you're going to outsource your sales, try and pick something internal. And I mean, that can be an internal hire. So I'm not saying you've got to find someone who's already in your team, because there probably isn't someone in your team. Otherwise, you might have already gotten there already. So think about, okay, well, we want to hire a sales assistant, for example, or you might want to hire a business development manager, or you might be looking for a sales manager or a sales director. Like, the size of your business, the industry, etc., is going to depend on what that is that you're going to bring in. But let's just say, in the most basic sense, you're going to bring in like a sales assistant. Let's just run through a really quick what you should and shouldn't do if you're going to do that, because I think this could really help so many businesses if they actually took this seriously. So if you are going to bring someone into the business to do sales on your behalf, and it's essentially taking over a chunk of work that you usually do, and you're going to give it to them so that they can do it. Just do not set them up to fail, because most businesses do set them up to fail, which is why it doesn't work. The first 90 days is so important if they're coming into the business. The first 30 and the first 7 are crucial for this sort of role. If you are going to have someone in your business, what I would recommend is they spend 2 weeks as a minimum following you around every single thing you go to. Like, your whole week. I don't care if it's not related to sales as a sales activity, but they come to you to your operations meeting, to a board meeting, to whatever. The size of the business is going to depend on it, but like, come to an appointment or whatever you're doing, follow you for 2 weeks in the business. They need to fully understand what it is that you do in the business. You then need to sit and you need to take them through a sales masterclass in terms of how you do sales. They need to be there for consultation calls. They need to see how you talk to people. They need to see your whole process. You need your sales process wrote out. You need sales funnels. You need visuals. You need to really take them on an intensive training of understanding your business. And we did this. I did this. How many years ago was that? 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Can't remember. My sister, she works with me in the business, and we did this. She came for 2 weeks. I can't remember when it was, but we did this in a variation of forms. And honestly, it's the best time you're going to spend doing this. Like, it's really, really important. Even if they're, mine is not a full-time team member, she's part-time, but if it's part-time, I still think it is totally worth it. They need to come on the journey of understanding you and your role, and then they also need to come on the journey of understanding what does sales look like in your business. Go through acronyms, go through all of the things that is to do with what it is they're selling. They then need to understand what are they selling. This is where it goes wrong all the time. Like, make sure they know what the inside of it looks like. Make sure they see what it is. What's the service? How does it work? What does it look like? Where does it take place? Like, they need to understand what it is that you are trying to get them to do. You then also need to talk through your clients and your customers with them. So show them the pipeline that you've got currently. Show them and talk to them about specific people so that they can understand a range of different people within your funnel. Talk through existing clients, talk through past clients, talk through clients that were an absolute nightmare and that were horrendous. This is all going to take time. People just bypass this completely, right? You cannot bring someone in and just be like, yep, you're in charge of sales now, go and get sales. It's not fair and it does not work. They might bring you the money you want, but I can categorically guarantee that either 6 months down the line or 12 months down the line or even longer, it brings you a whole host of issues from a variety of different departments if the onboarding is not done correctly and well. And I see this happen so much because people get impatient and they're like, we just want to bring someone in. So spend that first 7 days, the first 30 days, the first 90 days, really establishing for them to understand the business. Your person, if you bring in one person in internally, they need to understand the business more than nearly anybody else in the business, I would argue. And that's really hard, right? Because often you're hiring someone who that's not really their job, but they need to fully understand how you think about the business, especially if you're someone who is delivering it. So if someone's selling on your behalf, but it's a service that you're then going to go and execute. So let's just say training, for example. Maybe you sell like workshops into corporate spaces or businesses, and someone's selling it on your behalf, but then you as the CEO and as the director as the one that goes and delivers it. That is difficult to get right. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to get right. And the person who is selling on your behalf needs to so understand the journey. They need to understand what the journey is for both the client, the stakeholder, the business, the journey the business has been on. Like, they need to basically do a PhD on your business. They need to fully understand what's going on. The other thing they need to be able to do is speak your language, which is one of the hardest things that people kind of bypass and they forget about. They need to be able to speak the language in which how you would show up and speak, because your tone in that and the culture that you share through that will massively kind of come out. Getting clear on what part of the process do you want to outsource is also important for them coming in. So let's just stick with this idea because it kind of does apply even if you're going to hire like a team or if you're going to have multiple people. But think about, okay, what part of the process do you want to outsource? So maybe you're going to keep the conversion piece and the sales call piece you're still going to do. Maybe you're going to get the new person to deal with all of the bit before that. The lead qualification, booking the call, them understanding how much it is, them really understanding that first bit. Because remember, the closing piece of the sales process is kind of the smallest piece anyway. It's the whole piece before that takes up so much time, resource, energy. So really thinking about which part do you want to outsource? And again, I'm not saying that they can't do the sales call, but I'm saying if they can start perfecting certain pieces of the process, you will get a much better outcome to the business overall than if you just throw them in the deep end and go, yeah, great, let's just try it for a week and let's see how you get on. And again, use your intuition. Some of you might feel like actually the person you've hired, that is the best option for. But for most people, it'll be a real good case of trying to figure out which part of the process can you outsource and do you want to outsource and which don't you. Lead tracking, CRM updates, linking CRM with sales activity, all of that sort of stuff can be done by somebody else. And the more they do it by someone else, they start to get to know your business better and they really understand. If you're going to hire someone internally, you need to have a meeting with them consistently. You really need to be speaking to them to make sure that they're up to scratch with what's going on in the business and they're really glued into what the process is. Again, let's move on to the next piece, which is around systems and processes. This has to be in place before you hire someone. Do not outsource your sales or try to without having a way that your business does this system or this process. So some people will bring their systems of how maybe they're a sales professional and they've got, a whole history of how they like to do things. Or you might go to an agency and they have their own way. I'm not saying you can't take bits of that. I'm not saying it's not going to be good, because actually they might be fantastic and they probably will be, and they'll have loads that you can offer. But you must outline and be aware of what your sales process and your systems are before you then bring other people in. The reason I say this is so that you can protect your brand identity, you protect what it is you're doing, you understand that the business that you've built so far that is successful will remain so, and the essence of it will still be captured. And that is so critically important, because most people will turn around and say to me, we don't have sales systems, we don't have really sales processes, it's just sort of off the cuff and it's a whim and we do this and we do that. You still do have a process though. You have a way that you speak to people, you have an email that you like to send, you have a way that a time frame that is a normal process of, do you meet someone at an event and you sign the contract there and then, or does it actually take a month, or does it take 2 years? Like, you do have sales processes and systems in your business. They might not be very optimized, they might not be very efficient, but they are there. You need to have those documented in there so that anything you want to change beyond the point of bringing somebody in or a team in, you can do, but you're doing that together and you're both seeing how you can merge the two things to improve. And actually, it's a really nice activity to do to get the buy-in of the person you've hired if they can bring expertise with them, and they can show you how they like to do things, and you can be like, yeah, cool, it fits really well with us. Can we take this that we do and can we add that in there? And you update your systems and your processes together, but you must have them clear in your head of knowing what they are before you then try and help integrate them with someone else's way of doing things. Next point. If you are going to successfully let go of being the only salesperson in your business, I will argue that you need to become their mentor. Now, if that's external, that's difficult, but if you are internally supporting, or someone supporting you in their business as their sales lead, sales assistant, manager, director, whatever, maybe you've got a team of people, becoming their mentor is incredibly important, because they need to stay glued into you and how you work and how you do things and what your vision is. And people don't, they're busy. They don't have time. Like, lots of people say, well, we don't have time to do that. We don't have time to have this meeting and we don't want to have this one-on-one. It's like, okay, but if these people are bringing in revenue to your business, and let's be honest, if you get this right, they can bring in, potentially hundreds of thousands of pounds, or maybe that's millions of pounds or plus that. You have to figure out, where are you spending your time to make sure that those people are really thriving. Because the thing with sales is it's ever changing, and what you can't ride on it, you can't rest on it. So a lot of people will get it, do a piece of work, get to that point where it's working, and then wonder 3 months down the line why all of a sudden it's not working. It's because they've just completely abandoned it and they've just let them get on with it. Sales is something that is a constant being that needs to be bred. And that's why I said, like the beginning, you will always be involved in sales somehow. Like, you have to just dive into this idea of, I am going to live and breathe this because I love it and I love my customers and what I serve and our vision and the purpose of the business. And I'm going to be there for the people that also help us achieve that through being sales, sales team. So understanding your service is really important. And we talked about that earlier, about really understanding, what is it that you're selling? Because that's the biggest problem. If you speak to people who are coming in to help a business with sales, if there's a lack of clarity in the vision of the business, if there's a lack of clarity around what they're selling, if the marketing doesn't make sense and they're trying to push something but their marketing's not helping them find leads, that becomes very, very tricky and very difficult. And often if you don't understand the service or you don't understand the direction of the business, the poor person trying to help you with sales has got very little chance of being able to do so. And that will create frustration for them and anxiety, and it can be really difficult. The other thing you need to figure out is, how are you going to reward them? Sales is so incredibly important that you build a culture of reward in it, and that you are prepared to bet on your people and be like, yeah, if you make this happen, this is your reward. And I think if you've come from a corporate background, you're likely to be quite glued into that. But if you haven't, and I'm not saying that the corporate way of doing it is the best, by the way, I'm saying it completely needs to be rewritten, in my opinion. But if you haven't come from that, you might not have seen how commission works, or how bonuses work, or how building a whole structure around that works in the sense of making it long-term viable and sustainable. So really figuring out, how are you going to reward them? How does that fit with what it is that you believe in as a business, that you're trying to achieve? Where does that fit with the rest of the team? And how does that feel fair to others? How does somebody in X department feel if that's the situation that sales are getting? That can be a real touchy subject and something that is difficult to balance well. But really understanding how are you going to reward them is massively important. And don't over reward them too soon. This is the thing we see all the time. Do not set the commission too high from the start. Do not, do we go into this or not? I don't know. I feel like I'm opening a can of worms. Oh no. Basically, to put it briefly, you need to be very careful of what you're setting commission at, what you're setting expectations as. What is an expectation versus what are you rewarding people? Is a reward for someone meeting just baseline expectations, or rewarding people for exceptional performance? Those are two very different things, and people get them very mixed up. So I'm not going to dive too much into that, but really just think about, how are you going to reward the salesperson in your business? I've got two more areas we're going to discuss, and then I'm going to wrap this episode up because I don't want it to be too long. But often the question is, how do we then find a salesperson? How do we find someone to bring into the business? Like, where on earth do you find these amazing people from? And the answer I've got to say to that is, it's a bit of a wild card. I think people find some of their best salespeople from the most bizarrest of places. Yeah, they went out for dinner and they found a waiter who was really great, and they were like, do you want to come work for my business? Like, it can be that abstract. Some people are using a recruiting agency. Some people are, finding internal talent and saying, do you want to shift out your role? Do you fancy being sales? You really know the business. Like, you really get what we do. Do you want to move? Like, I've got clients who have had team members who deliver a service and then have managed to split their role, and they wish to, because it's actually heavy labor. So they've enjoyed splitting the role. So they do half sales, half delivery. That works perfectly a lot of the time, because it means that they fully understand what it is that they're selling, and they can really sell it well. So that can be a fantastic combination. Also, thinking about hiring young members of your team for sales. Do not stray away from thinking you can't hire young talent for sales stuff. Young talent is some of the best sales stuff you're going to get, especially if you're prepared to train them well, or you're going to pay someone to train them well, and you're going to support them and do the stuff we talked about the mentorship and all of that stuff. Like, if you're prepared, maybe you're prepared to get them a coach. Like, maybe you're going to hire someone who's quite young. Maybe they haven't got all the credentials in the world, but they're raring to go and they're hungry to learn. And you're prepared as a business, which I would argue is one of the best investments you'll make, in terms of you're happy to pay them and you're happy to get them a coach, amazing education, and some sort of mentor, and you're going to mentor them as well. That can be a beautiful way of finding full-time and part-time sales assistants, or persons, or directors, managers. That kind of grouping together is really important of thinking about. Finding salespeople is around soft skills. Soft skills are so important. Really thinking about, who do you want to represent your business? Because this hire is literally going to represent your business. It represents the brand. It's going to represent who you are. It is the person that is a spokesperson now for your business to some degree. And so getting that right is crucially important. I'd also say, don't hire too fast. Do not just take someone because you feel like you're desperate and you've got to make it work. You're better off keeping on doing it yourself than you are hiring the wrong person, in my opinion. Most of the time, it just doesn't pay off, unless you really take the time to find someone. And I'm not saying that they have to stay forever. It's business. They're going to move around. But just really making sure that you feel like the person gets the business and wants to be there is crucial. Another pointer is talking about how do we do this at scale. So maybe you've got a salesperson in your business right now and there's two of you. There's like you and then there's someone else. Or maybe you've got a few people who kind of do a bit of the sales and the consultations, and they, they're a closer. Maybe you've hired some closers and they're decent, they're really good, and they close business for you. Maybe you've hired previous clients who want a bit of a side gig and they, close business for you because they've been a client, so they understand the process. The then question then becomes, how do you do this at scale and how do you make it work? This is where it gets really fun and very interesting. That is when you need to build a sales team. And that is when you have to really pour resource and time and energy into making sure that that is a solid function of your business. So if you're going to build a sales team, I'd recommend that you spend some time, in your yearly plan, and you say, right, I'm going to dedicate a quarter or maybe 2 quarters to specifically looking at building this team and spending time with them and integrating so many things in. You want a sales team leader somehow, whether that's a manager, whether it's a director. You want someone whose job is, they can still have, sales targets. It's important that they still do, but then part of their role is around motivation, is around reward, is around mentoring, is around coaching, is around helping them get their team to perform at X level you want them to. And that is something that people want to just hire someone for and let them get on with it. And I think actually what's best is if you hire, good talent, decent talent, but you also are prepared to really pair up with them together. And as they onboard into the business, you're helping to onboard them, but then you're also, the two of you together are helping shift the existing team or the team that you're creating and hiring together. And that works really well. But I just wanted to end on the idea that this can work really well, okay? You don't have to do sales for the rest of your life in your business, especially if you're business to consumer. It's a lot easier, I think. I've got clients who very much are not involved in their sales consultation processes. I mean, do I love it when they are? Yes. Do I encourage them to every now and again? Yes. Does their conversion rate increase when they do it? Yes, because I truly believe, and some people will argue with me, but I truly believe if you love your business and you're a good salesperson, you will never get a higher conversion rate than you doing it. You could argue, depending, sometimes you can get it where it is better, but most of the time, majority of the time, the owner of the business is going to get the highest conversion rate. But you can still make it happen, right? And I have got clients who aren't involved in their sales process anymore, and they have done it successfully. I just think people jump to this as a solution far too fast a lot of the time. Like, this is the sort of thing you want to be looking at once the business is generating some cash and is really cemented in what it does and isn't in the process of constantly changing things and tweaking things. But that being said, that doesn't mean to say you've got to be in business 10 years to do it. Some of the people I work with have been in business that long in order for them to get to the point to do this. But you can be quite new as long as the strategy's all there, the infrastructure's there, the ability to have your attention is there. There's nothing stopping it, but it's just about you figuring out how do you do it with all the constraints of the other huge pressures you have from running a business and all the other people and things that you need to action. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I feel like we've only scratched the surface on this as a topic. I feel like we could really dive further into how to effectively do this and all the different pieces we touched on. But hopefully this has given you something to think about and mull over. If this is something you are looking to do and you want support with, I'm more than happy to advise you on this and consult on what your best options are and, where your cash can be best spent. But do give it a go. If you're someone who's ready and you think, the business needs to step into this thing and I need to get out from being the only salesperson, definitely give it a go. And I'm a great example, we're a small business, a very small business, we don't have thousands and thousands of clients, but I still do have a bit of support in our sales process, and it's mega helpful, and it's 100% worth the time that I invest into it and have invested into it. And I really recommend, for the sustainability of your business, if something happens to you and you can't be in the sales process, the fact someone else can be doing that is immensely important, and I think is a worry. It's something that keeps people up at night of thinking, well, if I pull myself out of my business, will the business still grow? Well, thanks to digital marketing, yes, a lot of the time we can sell stuff. We can sell stuff for thousands and tens of thousands of pounds or dollars without having to see a person, because our content can do that for us. But also, it is nice to know that if you do have a sales process or something, or want to offer a way for people to interact with you without just using a fully digital sales process, that you can do so without you being the only person there. Hopefully this hasn't been negative. I hope it hasn't been too like downtrodden, but I'm honest, I'm open, I am realistic. I give you a kind of say the stuff that maybe some people won't, or maybe some people hide from. But good luck. I hope you have fun outsourcing your sales and enjoy the time that you have freed up from that. Take care. Bye.